Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So y'all tell me, what do you think is going on in this picture? You can put it in the chat. You can unmute yourself, but give me an idea. What do we think is going on?
I think two people are just laying down or observing or hearing someone play the piano.
Okay, excellent. Where do you think they might be?
I think a park.
A park? Is that what you said? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I noticed these bricks, this interesting brick pattern at the bottom. So maybe not like a street, but a park would work, maybe a sidewalk someplace, kind of fancy, recreational. Any other thoughts? Why do you think they're doing this? Why would people be lying under a piano?
Maybe they're doing a performance.
Maybe. That's a good thought. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe. Why else might they be doing this?
Maybe they're trying to get the full experience. I don't know.
Maybe. When we play, maybe. Oh, that's a good idea. When we look at this in terms of access and ability, who may or may not have access? Who may or may not have ability? So if this was, to get the full experience, maybe they, I had a thought last period, maybe one of them can't hear, maybe one of them is deaf, and this allows them to experience the music in a different way by feeling the vibrations, right? Maybe they are trying to get a different experience. Maybe this is where they sleep. I don't know. We don't know a lot in here, but it's interesting if we start thinking about who has the access, who doesn't have the access, and access to what. Okay, so now for the part of class I think you guys have been waiting for. How are you doing? I think, is anybody in this class having trouble getting onto Canvas?
Not really, no.
No? All you guys can now? If for some reason you can't, we are going to start talking about library access today. And Canvas has reset all of the passwords. Well, not reset, but Canvas has made it upped their password requirements because now we have access to the UT library, and that's the presidential library for LBJ. And so you have to have a higher, more stringent password in order to be able to get on. So if you need to change your password, if you are trying to log on to Canvas and it won't let you in, you might need to change your password, and I just dropped that link into the chat so you can do so. Homework. I was getting a lot of questions about homework. We need a list. Where can we find it? So in our classroom, under classwork, if you look, there is, under classroom resources, the very first thing is something called homework. And if you click on that, it's a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is also on my Google website, but it's a list of all of the assignments, the dates they're due, how to do those assignments, where to submit those assignments, all of that stuff, okay? And then we have upcoming dates down here. And the first one for you guys to know is the formal research summary. That is due on October 9th. So like in 2 weeks is when we are presenting or submitting that to UT. Okay, so that's why our pacing is moving so fast. Your very first paper that you're turning in, one of the 5 things that will be graded for you this year, this semester, is due in 2 weeks. So we gotta get busy in order to get that where it needs to be. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
The 6 weeks deadline for grades.
Okay, for our class, where is my calendar? Okay, our 6 weeks is over. Fort Worth ISD, your high school 6 weeks is over on October 16th.
Okay.
UT doesn't have 6 weeks, but yeah. So we'll submit this paper, and then the next week is the end of the 6 weeks. Okay. So a quick note about grades. I have graded, and some of you guys have been in communication with me. Here is my grading policy for you guys, okay? I will let you make up any assignment in the high school class, right? I can't do anything about the college class when you submit and what you grade. That is between you and the college professors. But for everything we do in the high school class, I'll let you redo anything. My goal is not to punish you with grades. My goal is to make sure you understand the material. So if we need to redo an assignment so you can show me you understand the material, that is fine. All right. So far, I haven't been taking off for you guys turning it in late. We're still learning technology. This is just a weird time. But probably next week, I'm going to start docking your assignments if they're late. Not a lot. I mean, you'll still be able to get a passing grade on the assignment, but you're not going to get, you know, like perfect scores for turning in late work. Does that make sense? So we'll probably start that next week. I know right now we are still in our grace period. The way you find out about the assignments and what you have to do is on Focus, there is an italic I at the bottom of the title of the assignment. And if you click that, it'll give you information about the assignment, what I'm grading, how many points each section is worth, how you can redo it. All that information should be up there. You can always reach out to me with questions, but if you see that you're missing a part of an assignment, just go do it and then send me a remind text that says I did it. And I will go check it and update your grade. Any questions? Okay, then let's move on to the next thing. So today we're going to write a research question so that we've got something to research. Okay, so we need to think about what an effective research question looks like, what we would need to include in your first and subsequent drafts of it. And I say that because, like everything, research questions are going to evolve. The more information we get, the more that our thinking might change. And when our thinking changes, we change our minds. This is how life works, isn't it? I mean, we think something, then we have a conversation with somebody else, and all of a sudden we're like, huh, I didn't think about that. And now that I am thinking about that, I might want to change my mind. So the research is going to be the same kind of thing. You're going to start with a topic and a question, but if that changes, that's normal. That's okay. All right, so what do we need in our first research question? Who, what, when, where, and why. Those 5 W's, okay? They're going to be important. So this weekend, I was listening to NPR, National Public Radio, and they were doing a story. They talked about a 13-year-old boy who had cancer. And that boy said the scariest day of his life was the day that he learned he had cancer, the day he got his diagnosis. The next scariest day of his life, the second most scariest day of this kid's life, was the day he went to the hospital for treatment and the doctor said, "We don't have your chemotherapy drug. You can't get treatment today." And that's because the pharmaceutical company that made his chemotherapy drug stopped making it. It wasn't cost effective for the company. Not enough people had this type of cancer and needed this type of drug. So it cost too much money to make it. They weren't making their money back. So they stopped making it. And that affected this kit. So I think I'm going to use that for my research question. All right. So who are my stakeholders? It's the patients and the drug companies. What's going on? Well, do we have access to the drugs we need to save lives? Why is it happening? Because some companies are choosing not to make the drugs because it's not cost effective for them. And at the same time, people are sick. You guys with me?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. So here's what that would look like. I just went through all that with you. Okay. So we're going to take our who, our what, and our why, and we're going to turn it into a sentence. So my sentence would look like, which drugs or treatments should pharmaceutical companies be required to produce and make available for ill patients? All right. Where are you going to find your topic? Well, hopefully you've been thinking about it, but let me also give you a resource. In our Google Classroom page under classwork, if you come down to classroom resources, I have a tab called Ability and Access Topics. And if we pull that up, you will see I've got tons of ability and access topics here for you. We also have the Padlet you started working on, which I will put a link to in the chat in a moment. But within this ability and access topics, you've got health and wellness, politics and policies, income and employment, and education. Okay, so be thinking kind of which area it is you're looking at while are interested in while I put the Padlet into the chat. And then we'll talk about how to pick your topic because you're going to do that for me in a minute. All right, here is the Padlet that we worked on the other day. Okay, that's the Padlet we worked on the other day. Okay, so back to this. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger or a lot bigger. Okay, and I know it's a little blurry. I'm sorry. But for health and wellness, if you wanted to look at that topic, you might ask about elder care or discrimination, medical discrimination against women, or genetic screening for disabilities, or access to healthy food, or physical access in the world, or sizeism, veterans healthcare, mental health services, access to healthcare beyond the ER, transgender access to bathrooms, telemedicine, pre-existing conditions, people of color's access to healthcare, transgender access to sports, the right to travel, access to art. And this is where I would put the drug prices. For politics and policies, you might look at the government and corporate control of information, children's rights, access to affordable and reliable transportation, access to citizenship, unfair sentencing, voting rights, foster children, slavery reparations, the right to travel freely, access to housing, religious discrimination, the right to utilities like heat, water, and electricity. You might even ask if the internet should be a utility, given how necessary it is for our lives these days. Down here under education, you might ask about affirmative action, financial aid, English language learners, reliance on standardized testing, physical access, school choice, charter schools, public schools, private schools, early childhood education, students with developmental and learning disabilities, technology access, remote learning, college admissions. Over here under income and employment, you might look at time off, maternity leave, which is in moms get to take some time off because they have had a baby, paternity leave, which is when fathers would get time off, mobility access, enforcement of anti-discrimination jobs, equal pay for gender and ethnicity, military access for people with disabilities, accessible product design, the glass ceiling for women, the glass ceiling for people of color. Excuse me. So within this, there are a lot of ideas that you guys can pick from. And what I want you to do is I want you to pick a topic. That's the what. And I want you to think about who the stakeholders are, who's involved in this. Then I want you to think about the why, and I want you to turn that into a question. And once you get that going, I'd like you to type it into the chat. That way we can get an idea of what your questions look like. This is a messier slide, but you can see I've got the what, which drug treatments. I've got the who, should pharmaceutical companies, and I've got the why, be required to produce and make available for ill patients. And that patients is my other stakeholder. So once you think you've got your topic, I want you to put it in the chat so I can give you some feedback. This must be a recent or ongoing controversy. So you could talk about slavery reparations, but you can't talk about slavery as in American slavery because that issue has been settled, right? We don't have slavery in America anymore. Reparations, which is where we would provide some money or other things for descendants of slaves to try and make things right, to repair what was done wrong. That is a topic that is ongoing right now. Okay, so I'll give you guys a few minutes. Okay, Chloe, why is mental health a push away topic when it comes to teens? Okay, so let's think about who another stakeholder in this would be. What responsibility does, I wonder if it's a push away topic to you in school or in the government. So I'm going to assume it's schools. That could be wrong. You can change this.
It can be either or. I say it's really all together.
So you might do it like this. What responsibility do schools have to address mental health in teenagers? Right? And now I've got two stakeholders in here. I've got schools and the education system, and I've got teenagers. But we could do, does the government have to address mental health in teenagers? There are different ways to look at that, but I want to get it so you've got multiple stakeholders in this. Okay. Miranda, yes, you can do serious topics, but remember, we're looking at access and ability. So you have to phrase it in terms of access and ability. So for sex trafficking,
like centers that can help women who have been in the, or men that have been involved in sex trafficking, and they have
absolutely. What access do women have, or do victims have, to safe environments and treatment following sex trafficking? Absolutely.
Mine's is gonna be like a serious question, but you know, like 9/11 type things like that.
Okay, so terrorism. Is that like domestic terrorism? I guess that would not be domestic, but it happened here, so maybe. Okay, but what access and ability are you looking at? Like, who has access to protection or reparations from that?
Yeah. Sort of like that.
Well, okay, terrorism's really broad. So what stakeholders are you looking at? Who are you thinking about not having access or needing access to something?
I wouldn't say needy, but like do better of or something like that.
Okay, who needs to do better? The government?
Yeah.
Okay, what do they need to do better at? Protecting us or?
Like monitoring people who's a threat.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard, right?
Well, no, that's easy, but it's harder to make it an access and ability question. That might be looking at something else. So what Who would be being denied access?
Like you could do maybe the aftermaths of terrorism attacks and how it left a lot of people scarred for life, and how they could recover financially or emotionally from those attacks, or how can the government prevent those attacks?
Yes, but I don't think government preventing that is an access and ability question. That's my problem. And if it's not an access and ability topic, you can't do it. Okay, maybe Davey on this, but the problem is I don't know how controversial that is. I don't know what you're going to be able to find on that, because I think most people would say, yes, they have access to services. So
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep thinking on that. You too. I just think access is going to be the harder part.
Oh, what about coverage? Coverage on the in media, like how some news outlets don't really focus on covering those serious acts. They rather situate on another topic than major terrorist acts.
Okay, so maybe we say something like, what responsibility, what guidelines are in place to ensure fair coverage of attacks when involving. Okay, I don't know if this is where you're going with this, but I have heard stuff like this, and I think this is what Miranda was getting at. What guidelines are in place to ensure fair coverage of terrorist attacks when involving people of color, whether as victims or not, right? Like if you have a group of like Black men with guns, that makes the news, right? If you have a group of white men with guns, I don't see that on the news so much. So maybe you could look at it that way. And terrorist attack might not be the right phrasing, but there is some access to fair coverage issues going on. And I have seen stuff on that, so you'd probably be able to find articles on that. But if that's not what you're looking at, that's okay. I'll keep thinking and we can remind chat about it. Okay, so Kennedy, which kind of quadrant are you looking at? Education, healthcare? Like when we're in this, where are you? Income and employment, healthcare policies?
I was doing education where it says racial bias and discipline.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. So then our stakeholders would be children and educators. And if you look at Fort Worth's data, it's not good. But responsibility, maybe do education systems have to to discipline fairly among Okay, so maybe like what responsibility do education systems have to discipline fairly among ethnicities and races? Or how can educators ensure they are treating boys and students of color in the same way they are treating white peers when dealing with discipline. Okay, maybe something like that, Kennedy. But it wouldn't even have to be race. You could, if that's what you're wanting to look at, you could look at boys and girls. You could look at both gender and race. Davion, I'm still thinking about yours. I haven't quit thinking about it yet. Okay. So you should have a general idea of what it is you want to look at. If not, stay on after class and we'll talk about it, or maybe we'll need to do office hours a little later. But that's not all we're doing today. Let's look at the next thing. Okay, so we've turned it into a sentence, and now we have to find the right text. You have to find the voice of one of the stakeholders. The next paper we do is called Mapping a Controversy. And in that paper, you will have multiple stakeholders, all right? That means you will have both sides. For this paper, we're just looking at one side. So that's why when you're doing your question, I want you to make sure you've got multiple stakeholders in the question so that you can do the same thing for the next paper. So you're not working twice as hard. This paper needs to be on an opinion piece, and an opinion is written clearly with the intent to persuade. It's information. Yeah, that's it. That's what an opinion does. Another type of text is called informational. That's like your straight news story. It'll fully summarize the controversy, and it'll include multiple stakeholder viewpoints. So that's more like what we think of as a neutral piece. That is not what you want for this assignment. You want an opinion piece. You want to hear the stakeholder's voice. Sometimes we have a mixture of both. It seeks to inform and persuade. You really want a persuasive piece. You don't even want the mixture. You just want straight up persuasive, okay? So you want the opinion. Let's talk about how you would find that. These pieces are typically clearly marked with the word opinion or editorial on it, okay? So when you're doing your search on this topic, you're going to want to look for opinion or editorial pieces. I've got 3 examples here, one of each, that I'm going to show you guys, okay? The first is, it's time for pharmaceutical companies to have their tobacco moment. So when I pull this up, you will see it is written by the New York Times editorial board. This is an opinion piece. The point of it is to try to persuade people to do or think or feel something. This is a stakeholder position. This is exactly what we want, okay? This piece, why can't dying people get the drugs they want, is a mixed piece. It's not an editorial, but it is by Katie Thomas. She's a columnist. It is seeking to inform and persuade. Okay, it's telling me about this bill, and then it's trying to persuade me that it's a good or bad thing. I could use this piece. The editorial piece would be better. This last piece, all still on my topic. I was just doing a Google search last night. As drug costs soar, people delay or skip cancer treatments. This is not either. This is a factual news story about what's happening to people. Okay, this is not an opinion piece. I cannot use this article. Okay, are you guys with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. This is really important because if you do this wrong, you'll have to redo it. This summer, I did a news piece instead of an editorial piece when I was taking this class, and I had to redo the whole thing, and that was not fun. So it's important we pick the right topic, and it's important that we pick the right article or text to use, or we'll have to redo it. Okay, so where can you find your text? You can find it in the newspaper editorial pages. like the New York Times, the Washington Post. Those are opinion places. You can look at professional associations. Like I might look at the American Medical Association, or I might look at a group of oncologists, cancer doctors. You can look in magazines like Time and Atlantic. Just make sure it is an opinion piece or a column, not a news story. Some of these require subscriptions, like the New York Times or the Washington Post. You can maybe access 1 or 2 articles free, and then you can't look at any more. I have a subscription. So if there is an article that you want, let me know, and I will pull it for you and email it to you. Okay? So you don't need a subscription. If you can't access it, if you let me know and it's the New York Times or the Washington Post, I can get that for you and email it to you. But there are other places where you can access those things, and those are in databases, which are big collections of all sorts of works. You have access to 2 of them. As a Fort Worth ISD student, you have access to tons of databases, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But also as a UT student, you have access to their library, which is full of databases, and it's even better than Fort Worth's, right? That's why you had to change your password. So let me show you how to get into both of these. Any questions so far? You guys are with me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for our Fort Worth one, I'm going to go to ClassLink, to our apps, okay? And I am looking for the library app. So this is what mine looks like. I probably have way more stuff than y'all do. And library. Okay, it's right here, Library Media Online Database. So I will click that, and this is what comes up. There are 2 databases on here which will be useful for you. They've got tons of stuff. Ancestry, Britannica, which is like an encyclopedia, World Almanac for Kids, school library catalogs, books. We've got the Tumble Books, where you can download books electronically. The 2 you want is one called Gale Kids, and the other one is called EBSCO. All right, both of these will have stuff for you. I'm going to click on Gale Kids. When I log on here, it says, click here to view the username and password for these resources. So it'll pull up a list of passwords for you to use. Look at all of these databases through Gale Kids. All right, tons. It's overwhelming. The one that you're going to want, the one that's going to be the best for you, is called Opposing Viewpoints. All right, so because it says the word viewpoint in it, I know it's opinion. That is what I'm looking for. So if I pull this up, it should let me log in. Okay, and I'm going to type in drug companies price. Okay, and it's going to give me some viewpoints. I've got one. The real reason the EpiPen and other off patents are so expensive. So this is talking right here in viewpoints about why something costs so much. We've got infographics, statistics, audio, but I want the opinion. I want the viewpoint. Instead of drug companies, I could do pharmaceutical. And then if I do that, I get 2 viewpoints, right? The government should allow price negotiations. So one of those might work for me. We'll have to see. Okay, the next place I can go is not in Gale, but in EBSCO. And it's the same idea. I have to log into my EBSCO database. There's something called Points of View Reference Center. That's where I want to go. And it's going to make me log in. Okay, and then Fort Worth is the login. I think that's the password. Okay, and so it's going to make me log in again. But you get the general idea of how this works. I don't want to waste a bunch of time trying to log you guys in. Okay, anybody have any questions so far? So you have access to Google, to do a Google search, and you have access through our district to those databases. The last place is the UT Library database, okay? And you can get there by clicking on this link, lib.utexas.edu, and it is going to take you to the UT Library. And once you're in, you can find, so this is really an incredible place to look for information, but it can be overwhelming. Okay, so we want to look in articles and more, okay? Or we could look in journals. Those two things are going to give us the opinion pieces that we want. It's going to give us a bunch of news pieces too, but that's where those things are located. We don't want to look in research guides. We don't want to look in Scholar, okay? Those are going to be neutral, factual pieces. We want opinion. So I'm going to come to articles and more, and I'm going to type in pharmaceutical price editorial. Okay, and that is what I'm doing. And I'm looking in articles and more. I can tell by this drop down menu. If I click this arrow, I can look in other places as well. Okay, I've got almost 72,000 results. That's way too many for me. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and you can see at the top it says article. I want opinion. So I'm going to come down here to where it says newspaper search. I'm going to click that, and up are going to come some opinion pieces. This is by the editorial board. And remember, I said if it's by the editorial board, it's opinion. So all of these are going to be opinion pieces. So I'm going to pick one of them to study. Look at this one. Exorbitant prices for leukemia drugs. That sounds like exactly what I'm looking for. So I will click that and it will pop up, and I might use that as my source. Okay, I'm going to put these slides up under Unit 1 slides so you can see how to do this. And I'm recording this class, so you'll have the video, and you can reach me through Remind or email. Here's what you guys are going to do. You're going to submit your research question and links to at least 2 opinion pieces in a Google form. And that's all you are going to do until you hear back from me. I don't want you wasting your time annotating the wrong article, okay? So you need to submit your research question, and you need to submit links so I can pull them up to 2 articles so that I can find them and check and make sure they would work for you. And if the one that works for you, that's the one that you'll start annotating. We need that done by our next class. Okay, so get this to me today if you can, so I can check them and let you start working. The way you will do that is in our Google Classroom. There is a form for you guys to fill out. Okay, fine. Show this tab instead. There is a form for you guys to fill out. It is called Controversy FRS. And when I pull that up, here's the Google form. This is what it looks like. Your name, your class period, what's your research question? And then copy and paste a link to your article, copy and paste a link to your article, and submit it. And that's all that I want you to do until you hear back from me. Does anybody have any questions?